Hello, today on Dr. Griggs we're going to be taking apart this Mackie SRM-450. It has a bad volume potentiometer. We're going to change that and see if we can make this thing like new again. Alright guys, so the first thing we want to do is we want to remove this back panel. And it looks as though this is the exact same piece as this. This is a separate piece, so we're going to leave this alone. What we're going to do is we're going to pull these screws out, these three on either side of the heatsink, and we're going to pull these two out right here. Now for our components back here, we have our power input, we have our power button, we have a timed turn off. I guess that's so if there's no input signal for a certain amount of time, the speaker will turn off. We have a frequency hertz adjuster for air. It goes from 100 hertz to 12,000. And we have our low cut at 75 hertz. And we have our volume potentiometer right here, which is very loose. And when you adjust the volume, it crackles through the speaker and makes a lot of noise. And it's just not working out for the owner. And we have our peak right here, indicator, and our present signal indicator. Now right here we have our input XLR and we have a parallel through output XLR. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove these screws and get them out, and we're going to go ahead and start taking a look. Take the last screw out and hold it so that it doesn't fall. Grab the heat sink itself and start to tilt it back very slowly. Sometimes these wires can get caught up in between the board or cracks down in here. And then you want to look right here. You've got two wires that you have to disconnect. You've got this one, which you just pinch this right here, push it in, and work it back and forth and pull it straight out. And then you have this one right here, which you grab the connector with your fingernails, work it back and forth, same thing, and it comes out. Once these two are clear, you can take the amp out and set it on its backside. Now that we have our amp out and we can actually service it, we can see that the potentiometer for the volume is soldered in right here. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to actually take this main board as one piece off of the heatsink so that we can go ahead and access the front of the potentiometer so that we can remove it after unsoldering it. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to start to unplug everything. We have to unplug these two cables here. Note that black goes here, white goes here. And we're going to unplug this connector right here. And we're going to do that by lifting our wires up out of the way. Same as the first connector, you just push in the little tab. It's kind of hard to do this with two hands or one hand holding the phone. There you go. Just push that in so that that clip releases right there. And you just pull it straight out. And then these two right here, we just want to grab them and work them and pull them straight out. I'm going to use two hands so that I can actually hold the board so that I don't put any pressure on the board. You never want to bend the board. We cut this zip tie. We bend this out of the way slightly. Pull this out of the way. Alright, I'll bring you back on when that's... Okay, so these were a little hard to get off. What I actually had to do is take a flat head, and while I was pulling on them, gently put the screwdriver right here and twist, just so that you can catch the inside lip of the terminal and get it to come off, because it's actually on there pretty tight. Okay, let's just flip this around for a second. Now here is our XLR input and through output. And they are attached with this very thin ribbon cable right here, and it is not a detachable component from the main board. So what we're going to actually have to do before we remove the main board is we want to actually unscrew this XLR input and through output from the actual back of the component. So what we're going to do is we're just going to stand it up just like this, and we're going to take a Phillips head and we're going to remove these 4 screws so that this is loose. Sorry, I was pointing the camera too far up. Here and here, and then that will be out of the way. Note, okay, this ribbon cable is extremely thin and can be damaged very easily. So just unscrew it and let it hang there. Okay, do not try to pull any pressure on it. Do not try to do anything, because if you tear this, you're going to have to replace it if it's damaged in any way, because this is how the sound actually gets from the XLR component to the main board. Okay, and after we remove these screws and get this loose, we're going to remove all the screws that hold the main board down, which is here. We've got one here, here, here. We've got all the screws on our transistors, and it looks like here, here, and you see these 2 pieces right here, they're actually compressed onto the board and go to here. So the here and here as well have to come off, and I'll bring you back when all of those are loose. We have all of our transistors loose, and we have all the screws out of the main board, which, by the way, there was one hiding right here in between these 2 capacitors. Make sure you get that one as well. What we're going to have to do now is remove the power board, because we have a piece of metal here that goes over the main board, and it's attached with the main power board. So what we're going to do now, before we continue, is we're going to remove the rest of the screws on the front of the panel here, which are the screws for the power connector, and these 2 screws which hold down the metal plate and the other side of the power board. And also we're going to go ahead and just grab the volume knob on the potentiometer and just pull it straight off. It may take a little bit of pressure. If you have trouble getting it, take a flathead screwdriver gently underneath it and start turning very gently, and just get it to slide out a little bit, and then you can grab it the rest of the way and just pull it right off. It should slip right off. We'll put that with everything else that we have set aside. So we'll remove these 2 screws, and go ahead and pull the main power. Okay, just one more quick thing. You're going to have to unplug the power switch, which is right here. Again, I had to use my flathead just to put it right here and just barely turn to get it started. Another thing is all the screws that come out for this, and also the ones for the transistors, have very small washers on them and spacers. You want to make sure that you keep them where they're supposed to go. You know, separate your screws. I've got different screws set aside for what they go to. They're all the same length, so it doesn't matter where they go, except for I have these laid out in the order that they actually came out of the unit. But you want to be very mindful of the washers and lock washers and any other components. You want to make sure those little pieces are accounted for and they go back to where they go. And you're also going to have to remove this ground nut right here, so that you can get the ground wire off for the power jack. So you're going to need the proper socket for this, and also the proper socket to remove the back of the nut for the plug. So just take your time, go slow. You never rush stuff like this. All right, let me get this off and we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so now I can give you all kind of a more rundown of how this all comes apart, because now I've got it all apart. So after you get this off, what you're going to have to do is take a flathead and be very cautious. You're going to have to push in these small tabs right here to get the power switch out of the board. You just push these in one at a time and work it out of its hole. And then you get your nut and your screw out that hold in your input power jack. And these are right here. And the order is, the screw comes in from the front, and you have a washer. You have a bite washer, and then you have the nut that goes on the back here. And you need to remove 2 bolts here and 2 wires from here. One of these grounds goes to the XLR component board. And the order that it goes is XLR ground, and this is when you're installing it back on. XLR ground, nut, or washer, bite washer, nut, power ground, washer, bite washer, nut. And that's how that goes on. The two screws that you removed from the front panel here, the bottom one holds this plate and threads into the power board. I guess I should say power input board because it's really not a power board. It's just, it's got the fuse on it, but it doesn't really do much. It's the input power board, and it has the power switch on it, and it has the fuse on it. All right, so you take those off right there, and the top one, the top screw, actually holds another pin on, or a mounting pin for the main board. Okay, now that all that's cleared up, we're going to go ahead, and it's time to remove the main board. And what you want to do is you want to take your finger and your thumb, and you just kind of slowly lift gently here, and then also do it right here, just to kind of break the seal of the transistors. It's got a pad on it. Instead of heatsink cream, it's got this gray pad, and you just break that seal between it and the heatsink. And then once you get that off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a hand here, and I'm going to put a hand here. You won't be able to see it because I'm going to do it with the phone. And I'm going to lift it straight up, being mindful of the XLR terminals. And I'm just going to lay it down right there. And there it is. Now our heatsink is separated from our board. Now we can get to our jacks right here. All right, we can get to our soldering points right here for the new potentiometer. And we can desolder this. And we have to desolder right here as well. And right there as well, because they mount the front of it, as you can see there. And we'll go ahead and get this bad potentiometer off here. And I'm going to go ahead and desolder these and remove the bad potentiometer from here. And you just be very careful with that. However you wish to remove the solder, there's different tools and methods of doing it. So once I get the old potentiometer off, I'll bring you back and we'll go from there. So I took the old potentiometer off and soldered the new one on. A little bit trickier than I thought it was going to be, just because you've got two places that you have to solder here and here that hold it, like I said. But then, you know, and then you have all the pins. 1, 2, 3, 4. You got 6 pins. So to remove them individually and then install the new ones individually, and everything is very tight and close on this board, so to do it so that it doesn't mess with the resistor that's right here and everything else, it's a little tedious, but it's finished and done. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just reverse our steps. We're going to pick up the board, and we're going to set it into its proper place, and we're going to insert our XLR back into its place. I'm going to run this behind. No, let me do it right there. And then all we got to do is start putting everything back together. And again, just in case you mess this up, it goes the XLR ground, and then it goes this washer, and then it goes the bite washer, and then it goes this nut, tighten that down real quick. You don't have to like kill it, you just got to put it on there. And then you've got the ground for your power board, another washer, another bite washer, and then the final nut. Let me just tighten that down real quick. All right. And now we're going to come back and we're going to install our board screws. I like to install all the screws by hand at first on anything. Don't tighten them, just get them a couple of threads in so that they're in there and they're good to go. especially when you have something like this that has a bunch of multiple screws, because if you tighten down as you go, you might have something misaligned somewhere and one of the screws won't want to go in. I had to move the board a little bit to get this one to start. Kind of tight. Can't really. Hold on, I'm going to get this one screw right here. I got to set down the camera. Alright, there we go. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put in all the mounting screws on this side. And then I'm going to install the mounting screws for the XLR. And then I'll come back and show you how the power board goes on. Okay? Okay, so now we've got everything tightened back up on the main board. All the screws that hold the main board on. All the screws and the washers that hold on the transistors. And we've got our XLR input and through output screwed in. We've got a new zip tie for our plate right here. And we've got the screw for it. And I'm going to tip it on its side just a little bit. Okay, now remember the top screw right here holds down the main board. It's got a foot on it that this screws into. The bottom screw is the screw that holds on this plate, and it screws into this. So what you want to do is you want to put your plate here first, then put this over it. And the screw comes through. So I can do this with one hand. There we go. And you tighten this down right here. Now I'm going to leave it a little bit loose. I'm just going to do it kind of finger tight because I've got to align it up for our power socket. And let's see if I can get this to stand right here. Yes, I can. Very good. Alright, so the order in which this goes is screw from the bottom, washer, bite washer. I call it a bite washer. Some people call it a lock washer, just like a regular lock washer, but tomato to each his own. And then the nut goes on top of it. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. Put my screw. My washer. My bite washer. The only reason I call it a bite washer is because it's got teeth that go around the whole thing that bite into both sides, as opposed to a regular lock washer where it just has the two pieces that bite. Alright. And there we go. Now we're going to tighten these two down, and then we're going to tighten down the one under this, and I'll come back and we'll start hooking up all the wires and installing the amp back into the speaker. Oh, and we have to install the power switch. We'll go ahead and do that before. Right. Now those are tight. So now what we're going to do is we're going to fish our plugs for our power switch through. And you just put it in place and pop it in there. That's it. And then you just take the wires and you push them on. Make sure you put a finger on the back of the board so you're not putting any pressure on the board itself. Alright. Now we've got our power wires in place. We're going to hook this up, and we're going to put this right here. Bend this over as it was. And then this came across right here. We're going to plug this in. You just put it straight down in there. Don't come in from an angle. And I'm gonna hook these up. I'm gonna put the zip tie on, clip the zip tie off, and then we're gonna mount it back in the speaker, and we're done. We're gonna crank it up, see how it sounds. All right, so we've got the wire back in place just like it was. We've got our brand new zip tie on there. This is down, the wire comes here. This is plugged in. Everything's ready to go. So what we're going to do now is place it on the lip there, slide it back so that it's angled and sitting. We're going to take this small wire and we're just going to push it into its terminal right there. And then we're going to take these 4 big ones and we're going to push it straight down into its terminal till you hear a click. There we go. And I'm just going to lift up on it and I'm going to stick my hand in here and make sure that these wires are kind of all off to the side where they should be. And there it is. Now, let me just get one of these screws started in here. Okay. Now all we have to do is put in all of our screws. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 screws. And since we're back here, we will go ahead and gently. What you do is you look inside the knob and you look on the potentiometer. It's got a flat edge and then a moon shape. So you want to look inside the potentiometer and see where that flat edge is. And you just take that flat edge and line it up. And then you just gently push it straight on. You don't want to push too hard. When it stops, it's done. Don't try to keep cramming it on there. It doesn't go all the way down to touch this. You just put it on there and then when it stops, it's done. About like that. And there we go. It's not doesn't have the play that it did, and hopefully we'll have good sound. Now I'm going to go ahead and tighten all these screws up, and then we'll plug it in and see what it sounds like. So we've got our computer plugged into our soundboard, plugged into our speaker. Let's see if we fixed it. Sounds good. Now let's see here. We're going to see if our potentiometer is smooth and there's no scratching in the speaker. Down, nice and quiet. And up, nice and quiet. I'm going to turn this down a little bit so that I can turn this all the way up. Just to make sure that it goes all the way up with no scratching. I have no scratching. Alright, we'll set this for unity. Oh, normal is what it's called on this. And there we are. And that is how you replace the volume knob on a Mackie. Potentiometer volume knob on a Mackie. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope the video was informative. And if you actually own a Mackie SRM-450, then this will explain on how to change that potentiometer, because it is a common problem with these speakers. Although be it that this is an amazing speaker. This thing lights up a room. Really good. It's a very, very high quality speaker, and it'll crank out. So I hope the video is good. Please subscribe. Please comment. I'd also like to give a shout out to Jesse. He runs Mr. Smokey's Karaoke at Sweetwater on Tuesdays and Wednesday nights. He does an excellent job. It's one of his pieces of equipment, and he was kind enough to let me film the repair of it today. So shout out to him. Big props. Keep doing your thing. Y'all go check him out at Sweetwater in Duluth. And wonder what it's going to be next. See you next time.